Hey guys, tonight we're slipping between the silk sheets of ancient Egypt, specifically, the kind that rustle in the dim, oil lamp glow of a pharaoh's bedchamber. You're not just learning about history tonight. You're living it. And let's be real, you probably won't survive this. The Nile's glittering surface hides crocodiles, and the palace's gilded halls hide far worse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love imagining you all out there, half asleep but too curious to tap out yet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the scent. Not the dry, dusty smell of temples or the metallic tang of the Nile at dawn, but something richer, heavier, like honey stirred into wine, crushed lotus blossoms, and the faintest hint of sweat beneath it all. Your head throbs. Your limbs feel too warm, too soft. You blink, and the world swims into focus, low ceilings painted with stars, a floor cool against your bare feet, the whisper of linen against your skin as you shift. Where? A hand clasps your wrist. Don't speak yet, murmurs a voice. A woman's face leans into view, kohl-rimmed eyes, a mouth painted gold at the edges. You're in the place of the pomegranate. The pharaoh's chosen you. Your stomach drops. Chosen. The word slithers through your thoughts. You remember fragments, the market, a sudden grip on your arm, a cup pressed to your lips. Now this, a room draped in shadows, your body adorned in sheer pleated linen, your skin oiled and gleaming like something prepared. A giggle ripples from the corner. Two other women lounge on cushions, watching you with lazy amusement. One twirls a lock of hair around her finger. Fresh ones always look like they're about to vomit, she says. Mainstream historical fact, the place of the pomegranate wasn't just a poetic harem name. Pomegranates symbolized fertility, and their juice was sometimes used as a rudimentary dye to stain lips and cheeks. Quirky tidbit, archaeologists found traces of ancient Egyptian Viagra, a mix of honey, dates, and goat bile, in some royal chambers. Historians still argue whether it was for performance anxiety or just a really bad smoothie. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether royal concubines were seen as lovers, political hostages, or sacred vessels for the god king's divine essence. Spoiler, probably all three. The gold-lipped woman, Neith, you'll learn later, presses a cup into your hands. Drink. It'll steady you. You sip. Date wine, thick and sweet. Outside, a low drumbeat thrums through the walls. Somewhere, a woman is singing. Then the door opens. A silhouette fills the threshold, tall, broad-shouldered, the ram-headed crown of a mun glinting above him. The room goes still. The giggling girls straighten. Neitha's grip tightens on your arm. Oh. Him. The moment Queen Tai's name is whispered, the air changes. Neitha's fingers dig into your wrist like talons. The other concubines stiffen, their playful smirks vanishing. Even the oil lamps seem to flicker lower, as if bowing to the unseen presence now stalking toward you. She wants to see you. Now. The servant's voice is barely audible, his shaved head glistening with sweat. You're led through corridors where the painted eyes of gods follow your every step. The walls press closer here, the ceiling lower. The scent of myrrh grows oppressive, clinging to the back of your throat. Then, a curtain of blue beads, clicking softly as you push through. The chamber beyond is smaller than you expected. A pool of water steams in the center, strewn with petals. Queen Tai sits on a low bench, her bare feet dangling in the water. She doesn't turn as you enter. Come. That single word, smooth as polished obsidian. You step forward. The tiles are warm underfoot, heated from below, like the floors of a bathhouse. Tai finally looks up, and her gaze is a blade sliding between your ribs. She's older than you imagined, but age hasn't dulled her. It's honed her. The silver threading her braided wig catches the light like armor. Undress. Your fingers fumble at your belt. The linen slips away, pooling at your ankles. The air is cool against your skin, but Tai's scrutiny is scalding. She rises, circling you like a hawk over prey. Turn. You obey. Her fingertips trail down your spine, pausing at the small of your back. No scars? Good. Mainstream historical fact: Queen Tai was one of Egypt's most powerful queens, ruling alongside Amenhotep III as his equal in politics and religion. Some historians believe she even held her own court separate from his. Quirky tidbit: royal inspections like this often included sniff tests. Body odor could get you demoted to laundry duty. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether Tai's dominance came from political genius, divine favor, or a very persuasive personality behind closed doors. Tai snaps her fingers. A servant rushes forward with a vial of oil. The queen dips her fingers into it, then presses them to your collarbone. The scent of jasmine blooms thick and heady between you. You'll do, she murmurs. Then, quieter, for now. The unspoken threat lingers like perfume as she waves you away. The older concubines' chambers smell of crushed mint and stale wine. Merit, her name comes to you like a half-remembered dream, lounges on a pile of cushions, one eyebrow arched as you hover in the doorway. But the new one. She flicks a grape into her mouth. Close the door before the guards hear you trembling. You obey, your sandals whispering against the tiles. The room is cluttered with tiny alabaster jars, their contents mysterious and pungent. A bronze mirror leans against the wall, its surface smudged with fingerprints. Merit studies you in its reflection, her lips quirking. Tai marked you. She nods at the fading jasmine oil still glistening on your collarbone. Clever girl. That means she's testing you, not discarding you. You open your mouth, to ask what that means, to beg for guidance, to scream, but Merit holds up a hand. First lesson, she says, rolling onto her side. In this place, pleasure is a currency. And you, little Nile minnow, are bankrupt. She reaches for a clay figurine on the low table beside her, a fertility idol, crude and exaggerated. Running a fingertip down its curves, she smirks. Pharaoh doesn't want a shivering reed. He wants, she leans close, her breath hot against your ear as she whispers a phrase so shockingly vulgar it makes your toes curl. Mainstream historical fact: ancient Egyptian erotica included instructional papyri and figurines, some of which were found buried in royal tombs as guides for the afterlife. Quirky tidbit: concubines were sometimes given diplomatic gifts, like Nubian body oils or Cretan aphrodisiacs, to test before royal use. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether the famous Turin erotic papyrus was satire, education, or someone's very specific personal fantasy. Merit's laughter follows you long after you flee her chambers, the figurine's obscene silhouette burned into your mind. The summons comes at the hour of the jackal, when the palace sleeps but for the scribes tallying grain stores and the guards shifting their weight at their posts. A handmaiden with hennaed palms shakes you awake, her voice a hushed urgency against your ear. He asks for you. Your stomach plummets. The oil lamp gutters as you rise, casting monstrous shadows that twist across the walls like drunken dancers. The handmaiden, Tia, you'll later learn her name is Tia, drapes you in a sheath of linen so fine it floats about your limbs like mist. She anoints your wrists with oil of frankincense, the scent thick and resinous, meant to mask the salt of fear. Breathe, Tia murmurs as she traces coal along your lids. men forget that goddesses bite. The walk to the royal chambers is a blur of torchlight and your own pulse hammering in your ears. The guards at the door say nothing as you pass, but you catch the flicker of their eyes, assessing, calculating. Inside, the air is heavy with the musk of cedarwood and something darker, spicier. And there, sprawled upon a mountain of cushions, is Pharaoh Amenhotep III in the flesh. Mainstream historical fact: Amenhotep III's reign marked the peak of Egypt's international power and artistic golden age, though some scrolls suggest he delegated much governance to Tai while pursuing personal projects. Quirky tidbit: pharaohs were believed to emit a divine scent called swt-ank, sweetness of life, likely a mix of rare oils and good PR. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether royal bedchamber attendants were trained in sacred erotic rites or just very observant courtesans. He doesn't rise to greet you, doesn't speak, merely crooks a finger, the gold bands on his arms glinting. When you kneel beside the cushions, he reaches out and tugs loose the knot at your shoulder. The linen pulls around your hips. "Show me," he says, voice rough with wine and sleep, "why my queen marked you." And as your fingers tremble toward the clasp of his girdle, you realize with terrible clarity: this isn't about passion. It's an examination. The morning after, your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. The oil lamp has burned low, its wick drowning in wax. Somewhere beyond the gauzy curtains, a dove coos, the first herald of dawn. You expect to feel shame, horror. Instead, there's only a strange, hollow clarity. A rustle of silk. Queen Tai stands in the doorway, backlit by torches, a shadow stretching long across the tiles. She's already dressed for the day, her broad collar of faience beads clicking softly as she steps forward. "He kept you longer than most," she says. Not praise. An observation. You scramble to kneel, wincing as the movement pulls at tender muscles. Tai's gaze sweeps over you, the bruises on your thighs, the bite mark at your shoulder. Her nostrils flare slightly. "You'll dine with me tonight," she says. The Red Chamber. Sunset. And just like that, she's gone, leaving behind only the ghost of her perfume, cypress and something metallic, like the edge of a blade. Mainstream historical fact: Egyptian queens often hosted private meals to assess new concubines, using dishes like honeyed duck and date wine to loosen tongues. Quirky tidbit: the Red Chamber likely referred to a room with ochre-painted walls, a color believed to reveal lies when lit by lamplight. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether these private audiences were political interrogations, romantic rivalries, or elaborate audition processes for palace spies. As you stagger back to your quarters, a hand catches your elbow. Neith smirks, pressing a damp cloth into your palm. "For the sting," she murmurs. "And don't eat the pomegranates at dinner. They're always sour this time of year." Her warning lingers as you watch her walk away, the morning sun gilding her bare shoulders. The days blur into a rhythm as intoxicating as it is perilous. You learn to read the flicker of torchlight against the palace walls. When it trembles, someone is lying. You memorize the cadence of sandaled feet against limestone. Quick steps mean gossip worth hearing. Slow, measured strides often precede bloodshed. And then there's Nefret. You first notice her during the lotus offering ceremony, where concubines present the sacred blooms to Atha's statue. She's 2 women ahead of you in line, her spine straight as a spear, her wig coiled with golden serpents. When she turns to accept the censer from the priest, her eyes, kohl-rimmed and startlingly green, skim over you like a blade testing its edge. "Don't stare," Merit hisses, pinching your elbow. "That one's venomous." Nefret's lips curve as she glides past you, her shoulder deliberately brushing yours. The contact lasts less than a heartbeat, but it leaves a trail of goosebumps in its wake. Later, you'll find a single lotus petal tucked into your sash, its edges browned, as if held too close to a flame. Mainstream historical fact: the position of royal ornament, a high-ranking concubine, often came with political ties. Nefert's father was a Libyan chieftain, her presence a living treaty. Quirky tidbit: ancient Egyptian perfumers added crushed beetle wings to cosmetics for shimmer, a practice that sometimes led to allergic reactions during intimate moments. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether the infamous green-eyed concubine in temple records refers to Nefert or an earlier rival, or if the description was purely symbolic. The confrontation comes 3 moons later, in the bathhouse steam. Nefert corners you by the alabaster basins, her damp skin gleaming like oiled bronze. "You reek of desperation," she murmurs, plucking the sponge from your hand. "And myrrh. Ty's favorite." She drops the sponge into the water between you. When you reach for it, her foot comes down on your fingers, not hard enough to break bones, but enough to make your breath hitch. "Stay away from the prince," she whispers sweetly. "Or next time, it won't be your hand under my sandal." Only when she's gone do you notice the blood welling beneath your nail, and the lotus petal, fresh this time, floating in the basin beside your trembling reflection. The days stretch into weeks, each one layering new complexities onto your existence in the palace like gilding over clay. You rise with the ibis's morning cries, your body still humming from the previous night's lessons, with merit. The older concubine has taken to training you with the intensity of a charioteer preparing for war, her methods alternating between cruel and strangely maternal. Again, she snaps today, watching as you practice the 7 sacred gestures of invitation before a polished bronze mirror. Your arms ache from maintaining the 3rd position, palms upturned, fingers curved like lotus petals about to bloom. Pharaoh won't tolerate clumsy hands. The gods certainly don't. The mirror reflects more than just your struggling form. Behind you, through the open window, the palace gardens teem with life. Serving girls giggle as they harvest mandrakes, their roots eerily human-shaped, while scribes hover nearby recording the yields. A flash of gold catches your eye, Nefert holding court beneath a fig tree, her laughter like honey dripping from a knife as a cluster of junior concubines hangs on her every word. Mainstream historical fact: the 7 gestures were sacred motions believed to channel Atha's grace, each corresponding to a different celestial body. Performing them incorrectly during intimacy was thought to curse the union. Quirky tidbit: mandrake roots were shaped into consort dolls that concubines would sleep with to absorb bad energy before encountering Pharaoh, a practice that sometimes led to embarrassing mix-ups when servants confused them for actual lovers. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether these gestures originated in actual royal bedchambers or were invented by prudish temple scribes trying to sanitize more inventive practices. Merit follows your gaze and snorts. That Libyan asp has been restless since the new moon. Word is Prince Thutmose complimented your singing during the inundation festival. She adjusts your pinky finger's angle with her teeth, a disconcerting habit she claims builds character. She'll strike soon. Probably during our right on schedule. A commotion erupts outside. One of Nefert's attendants comes sprinting through the garden, her wig askew. The Nubian delegation. They've arrived early with what, girl? Merit barks through the window. Giraffes. Chaos erupts. The entire palace mobilizes to accommodate the exotic animals, a gift from Egypt's southern allies. You're pressed into service carrying baskets of acacia leaves to the makeshift paddocks, sweat trickling between your shoulder blades. It's there, elbow deep in foliage, that Nefert makes her move. How fortunate, her voice purrs behind you as you reach for another branch. Her sandaled foot crushes the leaves you were grasping. The beasts arrived just in time to see you in your natural habitat. The insult would be laughable if not for what happens next. As you straighten, she accidentally bumps your arm, sending your basket tumbling toward the lead giraffe. The massive creature startles, its hoof coming down hard on the toes of a Nubian ambassador. Silence. Then screaming. The ambassador's guards draw bronze daggers. Palace sentries respond in kind. Pharaoh's voice booms across the courtyard as he attempts to calm the situation, while Ty's eyes, sharp as obsidian flakes, find yours across the tumult. Merit materializes at your side, her grip vice-like on your wrist. Clever girl, she mutters as she drags you away. Using the Nubians as cover. Even I didn't foresee that move. But I didn't. Hush. Now you owe me 3 jars of that Syrian lavender oil for saving you. Her grin shows too many teeth. And you'll need to teach me that giraffe trick. As night falls, the palace hums with tension. The Nubians are appeased with gifts and promises. The giraffes, now safely penned, munch contentedly. And in the shadows of the colonnade, you catch Nefret watching you with something new in those cat-like eyes, not just hatred, but the first flicker of respect. It's more terrifying than any open threat. The Opit festival arrives like a flood, sudden, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. For weeks, the palace has buzzed with preparations, but nothing could have prepared you for the reality. The air itself seems to vibrate with drum beats as you stand among the other concubines on the palace balcony, watching the procession unfurl below like a living tapestry. Priests in leopard skins swing censers that billow narcotic smoke. Acrobats somersault through streets strewn with palm fronds. And at the center of it all, Pharaoh Amenhotep III rides his golden bark, his body glistening with sacred oils, the twin plumes of his crown brushing the shoulders of the slaves who bear his litter. Merit elbows you sharply in the ribs. Stop gawping. We have work to do. What follows is a whirlwind of rituals you only half-trained for. You help weave floral garlands that will adorn the sacred barges. You grind coal for the dancers who will perform the most intimate rites before the crowds. And most strangely of all, you're tasked with preparing the Bride of the Nile, a ceremonial concubine chosen to enact the union of Ether and Amun. This year, the honor falls to Nefret. You expect her to gloat as she's anointed with precious oils in the temple's inner sanctum. Instead, she sits unnaturally still as priestesses paint her body with liquid gold, her usual sharpness muted. When your eyes meet across the smoky chamber, there's no malice in her gaze, just something that looks suspiciously like fear. Mainstream historical fact, the Opit festival's climax involved a symbolic, divine marriage where Pharaoh, as Amun, would ritually unite with a concubine, as Ether, to ensure the Nile's fertility. Quirky tidbit, that liquid gold used in ceremonies contained real gold flakes, participants would later wash it off in the Nile, making festival season a gold panner's dream. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether these ritual unions were purely symbolic or involved actual intimacy. Temple art is deliberately ambiguous on the matter. The ceremony itself is both more and less shocking than you anticipated. In the torchlight of the inner sanctum, before hundreds of witnesses, Nefret and Pharaoh perform an elaborate dance of approach and retreat. Their bodies never fully touch, yet every gesture, every shared glance, every breath seems charged with meaning. When Nefret finally kneels to receive the ceremonial lotus from Pharaoh's hands, the crowd erupts in cheers that shake the temple pillars. It's only afterward, in the chaotic aftermath, that you stumble upon the truth. Hidden behind a tapestry in the preparation chamber, you find Nefret vomiting into a gold basin, her ceremonial makeup running in black streaks down her face. She doesn't notice you at first, too busy scrubbing at her arms as if trying to remove her own skin. "Get out," she snarls when she finally sees you, but there's no real venom in it. Just exhaustion. You should leave. You know you should. Instead, you wet a cloth in the ceremonial wine and press it into her shaking hands. The gold paint itches when it dries, you say quietly. Lemon oil helps. Nefrit stares at you like you've grown a second head. Then, to your shock, she barks out a laugh. You're either the stupidest or bravest mouse in this palace. She dabs at her face with the cloth. I suppose I won't have you flogged. Today. It's not friendship. Not even close. But as you slip back into the festival crowds, your heart pounds with something dangerous, the realization that even vipers have vulnerabilities. The knowledge sits heavy in your stomach as the celebrations rage on into the night, the Nile reflecting 1,000 torches like stars fallen to earth. Somewhere amid the chaos, Prince Thutmose catches your eye across the crowd and raises his cup in silent salute. You look away quickly, but not quickly enough. Because standing beside him, her face unreadable in the flickering light, is Queen Tai. The morning after the festival dawns too bright, the sunlight spearing through your lattice window like an accusatory finger. Your head throbs from the residual smoke of ceremonial herbs, your mouth cotton dry. Just as you're debating whether you can get away with sleeping until noon, a handmaiden arrives bearing not the usual breakfast tray, but a single papyrus scroll sealed with the prince's lotus sigil. Your fingers tremble as you break the wax. The message inside is brief. The Western Garden. Hour of the Swallow. Come alone. Merit, who's been shamelessly reading over your shoulder, lets out a low whistle. Well, little minnow, either you're about to become very important or very dead. She presses a vial into your palm, something that smells suspiciously like the poison antidotes the royal tasters use. Wear the blue sheath. It brings out your eyes. The Western Garden is Pharaoh's private sanctuary, a labyrinth of fig trees and lotus ponds where even senior concubines rarely tread. As you slip through the gilded gate, the sounds of the palace fade, replaced by the whisper of leaves and the occasional plop of a frog entering water. Prince Thutmose waits by an artificial waterfall, his broad back to you as he tosses breadcrumbs to the ornamental ducks. Up close, he's both more and less imposing than during formal appearances, younger looking without his ceremonial collar, yet radiating an intensity that makes your pulse stutter. Do you know why I called you here? He asks without turning. Mainstream historical fact, Egyptian princes often used gardens for private meetings due to their natural sound muffling properties. The constant water features prevented eavesdropping. Quirky tidbit, the hour of the swallow, mid-afternoon, was considered auspicious for romantic liaisons because swallows mate for life, a symbolism not lost on palace gossips. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether Thutmose's notorious garden meetings were political strategy sessions, romantic trysts, or elaborate traps for his mother's spies. You consider lying. Consider playing dumb. Instead, you hear yourself say, because Nefrit told you about the mandrake root. That gets his attention. He turns, his dark eyes widening slightly before his princely mask slips back into place. Interesting guess. Wrong, but interesting. He steps closer, close enough that you catch his scent, cedar and the faint metallic tang that clings to those who handle weapons. I wanted to thank you for what you did for her after the ceremony. I just gave her a cloth. You showed her kindness. His voice drops. A rare commodity in this nest of asps. My mother noticed. The unspoken warning hangs between you like a blade on a hair. You're still trying to formulate a response when a twig snaps somewhere to your left. Thutmose's hand flies to the dagger at his belt, then relaxes as a familiar figure emerges from the foliage. Nefret. Her green eyes dart between you and the prince, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reaches into her sash and produces a small clay figurine, an obscene fertility charm identical to the one Merritt showed you weeks ago. Yours, I believe, she says, dropping it into the pond with a plop. Best not lose such educational tools where the wrong people might find them. As she melts back into the garden, Thutmose exhales sharply through his nose. Well, that could have gone worse. You stare at the ripples spreading across the pond's surface. How, exactly? She could have thrown it at your head. The prince's unexpected chuckle follows you all the way back to the concubines' quarters, where Merritt takes one look at your face and immediately pours 2 cups of palm wine. Start talking, she orders. And leave nothing out. The summons to Ty's private chambers arrives on the 3rd day after your garden encounter, delivered not by a handmaiden but by a stone-faced Medjay guard whose biceps are thicker than your thighs. He says nothing as he escorts you through increasingly opulent corridors, past frescoes depicting Ty's greatest triumphs, subduing Nubian rebels, negotiating with Mitanni envoys, presiding over the judgment of traitors. The queen's personal sanctuary smells of crushed iris and power. Sunlight filters through alabaster screens, painting tiger stripes across the lapis lazuli inlays in the floor. Ty herself sits before an ebony game board, her fingers hovering over an ivory piece. She doesn't look up as you enter. Sit. You obey, knees pressing into a leopard skin rug still attached to its snarling head. The game before her isn't senet, as you'd expected, but something foreign, round pieces carved with strange symbols. Hittite war strategy, she says, answering your unspoken question. One should always study how potential enemies think. Her eyes flick to yours. Don't you agree? Mainstream historical fact, Ty maintained diplomatic relations with foreign powers independently of Pharaoh, corresponding directly with rulers like the Mitanni king Tushratta, a nearly unprecedented act for an Egyptian queen. Quirky tidbit, the leopard rugs in royal chambers were often retired zoo animals, their claws left intact as a not-so-subtle reminder of consequences. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether Ty's famous Hittite game set was a diplomatic gift, war trophy, or evidence of her rumored foreign spy network. You have approximately 3 heartbeats to decide your approach. Flattery? Deflection? The truth? I wouldn't know, Divine One. I've never met a Hittite. Ty's lips twitch. She moves a carved horseman across the board. My son tells me you have a talent for unexpected kindnesses. The way she says it makes the word sound vaguely obscene. He also tells me you didn't fuck him in the garden. Pity. Your face burns. Relax, girl. If I wanted you punished for that, you'd already be feeding the crocodiles. She abruptly stands, her lead bead skirt clicking like a snake's warning. Come. I want to show you something. What follows is the most terrifying hour of your life. Ty leads you through her private archives, scrolls detailing everything from Assyrian troop movements to the sexual preferences of every noble in Memphis. She shows you a map of the palace with tiny figurines marking each concubine's movements. Your own figurine, a crude blue faience piece, has been moved recently. You fascinate me, Ty murmurs as she traces the map's edge. A nobody plucked from the reeds who somehow caught Pharaoh's eye, charmed my difficult son, and earned a viper's tolerance, all without opening your legs for advantage. Her nails tap against your figurine. Either you're the most skilled player in this palace, or the luckiest fool who ever drew breath. You're saved from responding by a commotion outside. Raised voices. The distinct sound of a slap. Then, Mother! Thutmose bursts in, his cheek reddening where a ring must have struck it. The Nubians are. He stops short upon seeing you. Ty sighs. We'll continue this later. To your shock, she presses a tiny scarab ring into your palm, the kind used to seal confidential messages. Wear this when you want my attention. And girl, her smile shows teeth, do try not to die before our next chat. As the guards escort you out, you catch Thutmose's bewildered expression. The last thing you hear before the doors close is Ty's dry observation. Oh, don't look so betrayed, boy. You're not the only one who gets to have secrets. Pharaoh Amenhotep III takes ill during the new moon. At first, it's whispered in the corridors like heresy, a slight fever, a cough that lingers. But within days, the truth becomes impossible to hide. The god king who once towered over court now lies shivering beneath lion pelts, his golden skin gone ashen. The palace transforms overnight. Priests burn Kai-Fi incense in frantic clouds. Physicians come and go with pouches of exotic herbs. And through it all, Tai stands sentinel at her husband's bedside, her face as unreadable as the hieroglyphs lining the tomb walls. It's Merit who drags you to the baths at dawn, her grip iron tight. Wash thoroughly, she orders, scrubbing your back with salt and lavender until your skin stings. Especially there. And there. Pharaoh may be indisposed, but the royal apparatus still requires maintenance. Mainstream historical fact, Amenhotep III suffered from severe dental abscesses and arthritis in his later years. Modern scans of his mummy reveal eroded bone and evidence of chronic pain. Quirky tidbit, royal physicians used moldy bread poultices, an early form of penicillin, to treat infections, alongside more questionable remedies like powdered mummy skull. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether Amenhotep's decline was purely physical or exacerbated by palace intrigue. Some temple texts hint at a sickness poured into his cup. The apparatus in question turns out to be Prince Thutmose, now bearing the weight of interim rulership. You're ushered into a small but opulent chamber adjacent to the royal sickroom, close enough to hear the pharaoh's labored breathing through the thin wall. Thutmose stands at a table strewn with scrolls, his broad shoulders tense beneath the sheer linen. When he turns, you're startled to see none of the playful princeling from the garden, just a young man with shadows beneath his eyes and a smudge of ink on his cheekbone. You, he says, blinking. Of course it's you. What follows is neither seduction nor ceremony, but something far stranger, actual work. For hours, you help decipher reports from border garrisons, weigh tribute gems against their recorded values, even draft responses to minor petitions. Thutmose writes with surprising elegance, his hand steady even when his voice isn't. This one's from a farmer whose son was drafted, he mutters, showing you a tear-stained papyrus. Do we have authority to? A guttural moan from the next room cuts him off. The prince goes very still. Without thinking, you reach for his ink-stained fingers. Your father is strong, you say, though neither of you believe it. Thutmose's hand tightens around yours. Then, from behind you, a dry cough. Nefret leans in the doorway, a tray of medicines balanced on her hip. How touching, she drawls. The scribe and the prince, playing at governance. But when her eyes meet yours, there's no malice, just weary recognition. The three of you work in uneasy silence until moonrise. When you're finally dismissed, Thutmose catches your wrist. Tomorrow, he says quietly. Same time. As you slip back into the women's quarters, you nearly collide with Tai. The queen looks you up and down, taking in your ink-stained fingers, your rumpled sheath, the exhaustion weighing your limbs. Interesting, is all she says before gliding past. That night, you dream of scrolls that unravel into serpents, and a lion coughing up golden sand. The days blur into a strange new rhythm. Each morning, you're summoned to the prince's makeshift council chamber, a converted storeroom that smells of cedar oil and anxiety. Each night, You return to the concubines' quarters with your mind buzzing like a hive, fingers stained from handling papyrus, ears ringing with half-understood state secrets. Merit watches your comings and goings with narrowed eyes. "Careful, little scribe," she murmurs one evening as she braids your hair with unusual gentleness. "Knowledge is more dangerous than any lover." She's right, of course. The proof comes on the 8th day, when a minor official, a wiry man with the pinched face of a desert fox, lingers after delivering tax reports. As Thutmose examines the scrolls, the man's gaze slides to you with unsettling focus. "The northern vineyards yielded less than expected," he says, his tone oily. "Though I'm sure the prince's new advisor could suggest alternative revenue streams." His meaning hangs in the air like rotten fruit. Thutmose's stylus snaps in half. Mainstream historical fact: Egyptian tax collectors were notoriously corrupt. Some temple records show officials demanding bribes equivalent to a farmer's entire harvest. Quirky tidbit: broken scribal tools were often buried ceremonially, as they were considered sacred to Thoth. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether Prince Thutmose's infamous temper was genuine or a carefully cultivated political tool. What happens next occurs with terrifying speed. Thutmose stands, his chair scraping loud enough to make the official flinch. "You will address the royal scribe with respect," he says, voice dangerously quiet. "Or I'll have you counting grain stores in the delta until your eyeballs turn to raisins." The man pales. You freeze. Royal scribe. The title hangs between you like an uninvited guest long after the chastened official flees. Thutmose won't meet your eyes as he selects a new stylus from the box. "It's just temporary," he mutters. "Until father recovers." But when you're summoned to Ty's chambers that evening, the queen studies your ink-stained fingertips with something almost resembling approval. "So," she says, pouring wine into 2 cups instead of her usual one, "my idiot son finally made it official." The cup she pushes toward you is faience, not gold, but it's the same vintage served to ambassadors. The title of royal scribe comes with unexpected privileges and dangers. You're given a small chamber near the palace archives, a box of premium papyrus, and most startlingly, your own seal. It's a humble thing compared to Thutmose's lion-shaped signet, just a scarab beetle carved from lapis lazuli, but its weight in your palm feels like holding a sliver of the sun. Your first official act is to inventory the foreign tribute stored in the northern warehouses. The task should be simple. It isn't. The 3rd crate you open contains not the expected bolts of Syrian wool, but something far more disturbing: a dozen Nubian war arrows, their tips blackened with a substance that smells vaguely of rancid figs. "Don't touch those." You whirl to find Nefret leaning against a cedar pillar, her green eyes glinting in the lamplight. She's dressed not in her usual sheer linens, but in a practical tunic and boots, her hair braided tightly against her scalp. "Poisoned," she says, nodding at the arrows. "The kind that kills slow enough for the victim to name their murderer." She steps closer, her voice dropping. "They were logged as textile samples by our dear friend the desert fox." Mainstream historical fact: ancient assassins often used plant-based poisons like acacanthera, a cardiac toxin that could take days to kill, allowing victims to make final political arrangements. Quirky tidbit: Egyptian scribes developed a complex inventory code system using hieroglyphic puns to hide sensitive shipments from prying eyes. Open scholarly debate: historians still argue whether certain miscatalogued weapons found in Amenhotep's reign were smuggling attempts or evidence of an internal spy network. The implications hit like a sandstorm. If a royal official is falsifying records to move weapons, you need to tell Thutmose, you say. Nefret's laugh is bitter. And have him charge in like an enraged bull? No. She produces a scrap of papyrus from her belt, a duplicate inventory in different handwriting. We take this to someone who actually knows how to play this game. That's how you find yourself in Ty's innermost sanctum for the second time, watching as the Queen examines the poisoned arrows with the detached interest of a physician studying symptoms. How interesting, she murmurs, rolling one arrow between her fingers. These are wedding gifts. At your confused look, she clarifies, for my son's upcoming marriage to that Mitanni princess. Meant to ensure the union is short-lived. Her calm is more terrifying than any outburst. When she finally looks up, her gaze pins you and Nefrit in turn. You two will continue your inventory. Document everything. But from now on, she produces 2 identical silver bracelets from a cedar box. Wear these. They'll counteract most common poisons. As she fastens yours, her fingers linger on your wrist just long enough to feel your pulse racing. Welcome to the game, little scribe, she whispers. Try not to lose your head. Outside, Nefrit exhales sharply. Well, that went better than expected. How so? She didn't have us executed on the spot. Nefrit adjusts her new bracelet with a smirk. I'd call that progress. The moon hangs heavy over Thebes when the summons comes, not through normal channels, but via a child servant who slips a folded lotus leaf into your hand during the evening meal. Inside, a single glyph glows faintly with luminescent paint, danger. You follow the trail of crushed henna blossoms, an old concubine trick for secret meetings, to an abandoned gardener's shed near the palace orchards. The scent of overripe figs hangs thick in the air, masking other smells. Merit waits in the shadows, her face drawn tight. She doesn't speak, just presses a damp cloth to your nose and drags you behind a stack of empty amphory seconds before torchlight floods the path. Through the gaps between jars, you watch as 6 figures move in formation, not palace guards, but lean, hard-eyed men with the distinctive gait of professional killers. Their leader pauses mere feet from your hiding spot, his sandal crushing the henna trail into oblivion. Search the aviary next, he murmurs. The old bird keeper talks too much. Mainstream historical fact, Egyptian rulers employed covert operatives called Shemsuhor, followers of Horus, for sensitive missions, often recruited from the Medjay police force. Quirky tidbit, luminescent paint was made from crushed firefly abdomens mixed with resin, used primarily by priests for sacred texts, but occasionally repurposed by spies. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether the infamous fig orchard plot was a legitimate assassination attempt or an elaborate false flag orchestrated by Ty to consolidate power. When the hunters finally move on, Merit's grip relaxes slightly. They're purging anyone who knew about the Nubian arrows, she whispers. Her usual sarcasm is gone, replaced by something raw. The bird keeper, 2 scribes from the docks, now they're coming for me. Her hand trembles against yours. You've never seen Merit afraid before. Why show me this? Because you're the only one who walks between worlds now, she hisses. The concubine who became a scribe, the commoner who dines with queens. If anyone can get a warning to Thutmose. A fig drops from the tree above, exploding against the ground with wet finality. Merit shoves you toward a gap in the wall. Go. And if they catch you, swear you never saw me tonight. You want to argue. To drag her with you. But the old concubine's eyes flash with familiar steel. Don't you dare make my sacrifice worthless, girl. The last you see of Merit is her squaring her shoulders as she steps into the moonlight, the aging lioness drawing the hunters away from her cub. Dawn finds you crouched behind a statue of Uther in the palace courtyard, your limbs stiff with cold and terror. The night's horrors replay behind your eyes, Merit's final defiant glare, the wet crunch of sandals on gravel, the way the torchlight had suddenly stilled near the fig trees. You need to warn Thutmose. But the prince's quarters are swarming with unfamiliar guards, their faces hard beneath the gilded jackal helmets of the royal security detail. A hand clamps over your mouth. Don't scream, Nefret breathes against your ear. Her usual perfume is masked by the acrid scent of sweat and smoke. They're watching all his usual haunts. Come. She leads you through servants' passages so narrow you have to turn sideways, past laundry chutes that reek of lye, finally emerging into a surprisingly opulent bathing chamber. The moment the door seals behind you, Nefret rounds on you, her coal-smudged eyes blazing. Did anyone see you? I don't think. She shakes you hard enough to rattle your teeth. Your life depends on this. Mainstream historical fact, royal security protocols during times of crisis involved rotating guard schedules and decoy rulers, a practice that led to at least one historical incident where a visiting diplomat bowed to the wrong pharaoh. Quirky tidbit, the palace's secret passages were originally built for delivering hot meals quickly, earning them the nickname, the pharaoh's digestive tract, among servants. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether Nefret's well-documented actions during this period indicate genuine loyalty to Thutmose or an elaborate double game orchestrated by Tai. The truth spills out of you in jagged pieces, the poisoned arrows, the murdered officials, merits sacrifice. Nefret listens without interrupting, her fingers tapping an erratic rhythm against her thigh. When you finish, she exhales sharply through her nose. We need to move him. Tonight. Move who? The bathing chamber's false wall slides open, revealing Thutmose crouched in a space barely large enough for a child. His ceremonial robes are gone, replaced by a simple linen tunic. The prince's eyes are red-rimmed but alert, his jaw set in a way that reminds you suddenly, painfully, of his mother. "Hello, scribe," he says hoarsely. "Fancy meeting you here." Nefret produces a servant's headcloth and begins wrapping it around Thutmose's distinctive braids with practiced efficiency. There's a fishing barge leaving for Memphis at dusk. You'll be aboard it. Like hell I will, Thutmose snaps. I won't abandon my father too. Your father is already dead. The words land like a spear to the chest. Thutmose sags against the wall. You reach for him instinctively, but Nefret catches your wrist. The physicians confirmed it an hour ago, she continues, softer now. Tai's keeping it quiet until she can secure your coronation. But if the conspirators find you first? The unspoken ending hangs between you. Thutmose looks down at his hands, the hands that should be holding a crook and flail by now, and something in his face hardens. No. He straightens, suddenly every inch a king. We do this my way. Nefret opens her mouth to argue, but you surprise yourself by speaking first. Listen to him. Both sets of eyes, one green as the Nile Delta, one dark as the underworld, turn to you in shock. You press on, the words coming faster now. Running makes you look guilty. But if we can prove who's behind this. You meet Thutmose's gaze. Your people need to see their pharaoh standing strong. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then Nefret mutters something profoundly unflattering about idealistic fools and reaches for a hidden compartment in the wall. Fine, she snaps, producing 2 daggers and a vial of something murky. But if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. The dagger she presses into your hand is lighter than expected, its hilt warm from being concealed against skin. Thutmose takes the other blade, his fingers brushing yours in silent thanks. Somewhere above you, a palace bell begins to toll. The death bell echoes through the palace like a living thing, its bronze voice vibrating through the marble floors and up your spine. For 3 days and nights it will sound, 72 hours suspended between the old reign and the new, when chaos and opportunity dance their most dangerous waltz. Thutmose presses his forehead against the cool stone wall, his shoulders rising and falling with measured breaths. You recognize the exercise, one Tai taught you during your private audiences. Control the breath, control the fear. Nefrit checks the edge of her dagger against her thumb. A thin line of red blooms. Good enough, she mutters, then looks up at Thutmose. Your mother will have sealed the royal apartments by now. We need to. No. Thutmose turns, and in the dim light you see the ghost of his father's bearing settling onto his frame. We go to the Hall of Reckoning. Nefrit's knife hand twitches. That's where they'll be waiting. Exactly. The Hall of Reckoning, where Pharaoh's body would be prepared for its journey to the afterlife, where the sacred oils and linens were stored, where the very tools of immortality lay waiting. And, as Thutmose explains with terrifying calm, where the conspirators would need to go to ensure the proper funerary rites were not performed. Condemn his soul to wander, and the people will believe the gods have rejected my rule before I even take the throne. His voice is steady, but his fingers find yours in the shadows, squeezing once. We can't let that happen. Mainstream historical fact, the 72-hour window between a pharaoh's death and successor's coronation was historically the most vulnerable time for the Egyptian state, with at least 3 dynasties toppled during this period. Quirky tidbit, the Hall of Reckoning got its ominous name from an accounting error. A scribe once mislabeled the funerary supplies chamber as the Hall of Reckoning instead of Hall of Recounting, and the dramatic name stuck. Open scholarly debate, historians still argue whether Thutmose's bold move to secure his father's body was genuine tactical brilliance or a desperate gamble that only succeeded due to ties behind-the-scenes maneuvering. The journey through the palace's underbelly is a nightmare of close calls and held breaths. At one point, you press flat against a sun-warmed wall as 6 armed guards march past, their spears glinting. Another time, Nefrit has to quickly kiss Thutmose to disguise his face when a suspicious servant looks too closely. You try very hard not to notice how practiced the motion seems. When you finally reach the hidden entrance to the hall, a cleverly pivoting statue of Anubis, the smell hits you first. Myrrh and natron, yes, but beneath it something darker, meteor. The scene inside is both sacred and grotesque. Priests in jackal masks circle the alabaster embalming table where Amenhotep III's body lies, their chants rising and falling in time with the ritual knives. And there, at the foot of the table, stands Tai. She looks up as you enter, her face bare of cosmetics for the first time you've ever seen. The queen doesn't seem surprised, only weary. Took you long enough, she murmurs, then raises her voice. They're here. From the shadows emerge a dozen Medjay warriors, their tattoos glistening with oil. But more startling is who follows, the bird keeper you thought dead, leaning on Merit's arm. The old concubine meets your shocked gaze and winks, her face bruised but very much alive. Sorry for the dramatics, duckling, Merit croaks. Had to sell the act. Thutmose sags against you for just a moment before straightening to face his mother. The conspirators. Tai's smile is all teeth. Currently discovering that crocodiles are very particular about their dinner schedules. As the priests begin the opening of the mouth ceremony, you watch Thutmose, no, Pharaoh Thutmose for now, step forward to take up the ritual adze. The blade flashes gold in the lamplight as he begins the sacred words that will guide his father into the afterlife. And when his voice cracks on the final syllable, it's your hand he reaches for in the shadows. The coronation floods the 2 lands with light and noise, drums, dancers, the endless roar of the crowd as the double crown settles onto Thutmose's brow. You watch from the shadows of the royal pavilion, your scribe's palette heavy with fresh ink. Nefrit appears at your elbow, smelling of lotus wine and victory. Not bad for a Nile minnow, she murmurs, pressing something cold into your hand, a tiny lapis scarab, twin to the one Tai gave you months ago. She says you're to keep both. A matched set. Merit, resplendent in her new role as chief handmaiden to the Dowager Queen, catches your eye across the courtyard and raises her cup in silent toast. The bird keeper, now master of royal aviaries, chatters excitedly beside her. Later, when the torches burn low and the nobles have drunk themselves into stupors, you walk alone through the suddenly quiet gardens. The same path where, a lifetime ago, a prince once tossed bread to ducks and pondered games of strategy. Scribe Thutmose, no, Pharaoh, stands in the moonlight, his ceremonial collar discarded, the crown replaced by simple linen. For a moment, you're both silent. Then he holds out a papyrus scroll. First official decree of my reign, he says, voice rough with exhaustion and something else. Thought you should draft it. You unroll the sheet to find it blank but for a single line at the top. The royal scribe may enter the pharaoh's presence unsummoned. Above you, the stars spin their slow, eternal dance. Somewhere, a night heron calls. And as the first breeze of dawn stirs the reeds along the Nile, you realize you're home.